Hey everyone, so Bitcoin has been holding up amazingly well through the economic chaos of the last few weeks. And in addition to that, it will eventually catch up to gold. So right now, because of the economic chaos related to the announcement of tariffs and all of the crazy stuff related to that, gold has taken off. Gold, the precious metal, the yellow rock, has been setting all-time high after all-time high after all-time high. And today was above $3,300 an ounce, which is significantly higher than it's ever been in human history by a long shot. So why is gold way up? Well, gold was already held by a lot of central banks. Essentially, when economic chaos happens, people run to safety, and the expectation was that people would run to the safety of U.S. Treasury bonds. That is what normally happens. And so the Trump administration, Scott Bessent, all of the powers that be had a strategy, which was they were going to slap a ton of tariffs on everybody. That was going to freak out the stock market. As a result of that, there would be what's called a flight to safety. A flight to safety is when everybody runs away from risk and tries to put their money in stuff that they perceive to be the least risky. And as a result of that, they would buy U.S. government treasury bonds. But that is not what happened. That strategy failed because instead of running to U.S. government treasury bonds, people instead ran to gold. And to some degree, Bitcoin, although Bitcoin is still, the massive upswing that will result in, the flight to safety going to Bitcoin has not yet happened. So if you're looking for a good time to buy Bitcoin, I would say now is a fantastic time to buy Bitcoin. So the reason the flight to safety went to gold is a pre-approved asset class by everybody that was having a flight to safety. So right now, there are 0 central banks that hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets. But virtually all the central banks hold some amount of gold on their balance sheet. So it's very easy for a central bank to add gold to the balance sheet. It's literally just an asset allocation decision, like they make it, 1,000 times a day on asset allocation decisions. It requires no approval, no extra. You don't have to jump through any hoops. It's just as simple as them saying, hey, let's buy some more gold. Like, it's that simple. Let's buy some more gold. That is not the case for Bitcoin. 0 central banks own Bitcoin on their balance sheet, even though the United States has a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I believe that's part of the Treasury, not the central bank. And the U.S. government has not bought any Bitcoin. Same with El Salvador. They don't have a central bank, so there's no way for there is no central bank in El Salvador to be buying Bitcoin. So as a result of that, when the entire market freaked out and panicked, and I posted a couple episodes by Jack Mallers. Jack Mallers, the founder and CEO of Strike, Strike, probably has some of the best content out there explaining what has happened over the last couple weeks. So if you want to get the rundown from Jack Mallers, just go back to my Facebook posts and find the podcast episodes from Jack Mallers, the one from earlier this week, as well as the one from about 10 days ago, which was Monday or Tuesday of the last week. He does a really good job of explaining everything, including this week especially, does a really good job of explaining what all went down. So short take is, the government tried to crash the stock market to get people to buy treasury bonds so that it would push the interest rates down on treasury bonds. That did not work. Instead of buying treasury bonds, central banks instead bought gold, and China, in retaliation for the tariffs, dumped some amount. I saw one report that said it was $50 billion of treasury bonds. So the short take is the interest rate started climbing on the treasury bonds instead of going down, which was what was intended. Of course, the tariffs were a stupid idea all along. Tariffs are just bad policy, period. There's no good reason to have a tariff. And even though people, contort themselves in all sorts of bizarre contortions to try to say, hey, it's actually a good thing and it's a negotiating strategy and all this sort of stuff, tariffs just flat out don't work. And we've seen again here that they are not working. They are not having the intended effect. As a result of that, the flight was to gold rather than treasury bonds. Now, why does that affect Bitcoin, or how does that affect Bitcoin? It's actually a big deal for Bitcoin because, one second. Because in the continuum of assets, gold is much closer to Bitcoin than U.S. government treasury bonds. So if the flight to safety results in everybody going to U.S. government treasury bonds, there's no reason to subsequently believe that flight would then continue on to Bitcoin. But the case with gold is much stronger, because gold, the reason you would own gold in a situation like this is identical to the reason you would own Bitcoin, which is you're freaked out about the global economic system. You don't want to own treasury bonds because you think the government's going to print a ton of money, which is going to drive up inflation, and nobody wants to own a treasury bond that pays 4.5% if the government's going to print so much money that, inflation's 8% or 10% or 14%. So, but on the reverse side, any money in gold is one step away from Bitcoin, because the investment thesis for gold is identical to the investment thesis for Bitcoin, with the difference being that Bitcoin has much stronger and better monetary properties as compared to gold. So any money that is in gold can easily end up one day in Bitcoin. So the market, most of the people like me would look at the total market for Bitcoin, the first stage, the easy first stage, being the size of the market for gold. So the total value of the market for gold right now is something like $22 trillion. That's the value of all the gold that's ever been dug out of the ground or discovered in the entirety of human history that, humans have access to, is about $22 trillion. The total value of all the Bitcoin in the world is something like 1.6 trillion. I didn't check the numbers. I checked the numbers this morning, but I can't remember exactly what they were. I think it was 1.6 and 22. Anyway, the value of all the gold in the world is 13 times larger, 13 times larger than all of the Bitcoin in the world, which means even to reach parity with gold, Bitcoin can go up by a factor of 13x, which is a lot. 13x is a huge 1,300%. That is a huge gain. That's effectively, I would consider, in the bag for Bitcoin before you even start having a conversation about how much better Bitcoin is than gold. So any flight to safety that involves assets going into gold is eventually going to end up in a situation where those assets go into Bitcoin instead. It's just, obviously going to take a series of years or, potentially decades or longer. Because, hold on one second here, there's weird traffic patterns. Anyway, doesn't matter. My Tesla's driving itself, so it's better at recognizing weird traffic patterns than I am. I haven't touched the steering wheel or the pedals since I started recording this video. Actually, I haven't touched the steering wheel or the pedals or anything in the car since I was in my driveway. I literally pushed a button in my garage, and I have not touched anything since I pushed the button in my garage, and I'm driving. Anyway, so any money in gold is one step away from Bitcoin, and gold has been on a wild tear, and eventually Bitcoin will catch up to that. Now, Bitcoin has been holding up shockingly well with all this economic chaos. Normally, people run away from anything that's new. Right now, people are running away from the stock market, away from the NASDAQ, away from the Magnificent Seven stocks. They're running away from everything, including a bunch of crypto like Ethereum and stuff like that, cryptocurrencies or crypto projects or smart contract platforms, anything that is not Bitcoin in crypto, people have generally been running away from, but Bitcoin is holding up, surprisingly well at about $84,000 per coin. And that's because every time it's dipped, there's been someone there to buy it. A week or two ago, that was me when I took my total Bitcoin exposure from 99% up to an even 100% of all of the liquid assets that I own or control are now in Bitcoin. And so there's people like me that every time it dips far enough, it's like, nope, it's not going to dip any farther without me buying more. MicroStrategy's been buying more Bitcoin. I keep up with it on Twitter a ton, and there's companies, governments, and tend to be small governments. There is a lot of Bitcoin buying happening right now, which is why every time the price tries to dip, it eventually gets bought up and pushed back up. So eventually, all of that buying pressure will exhaust the people who are willing to sell their Bitcoin at 84,000 a coin, and Bitcoin will go on a wild tear. As it always does, eventually, if you wait long enough. A big determinant of that is how quickly gold goes up. So historically, there's a lot of people posting on social media on X right now showing that once gold goes up, typically there's a time lag of, I forget what it is, 108 days or 12 weeks or some amount, that Bitcoin tends to go up after gold. So gold tends to go up first because it's pre-approved on a lot more in a lot more places than Bitcoin, as in central banks can buy, they can buy gold without thinking twice. Bitcoin is obviously not approved by central banks for purchasing on the fly. When it is one day, you'll really see what the price of Bitcoin is capable of. But right now, every time everybody freaks out, the central banks buy more gold. And that's what they've been doing hand over fist. I mean, it's just been a massive, gold buying spree over the last, couple weeks, especially, but really the last 9 months. There's just been a ton of gold acquisition. So anyway, so for all those reasons, I think it's only a matter of time till Bitcoin goes way, way, way up. And what matters is how much Bitcoin you own before that happens. So now's a great time to buy. You can buy Bitcoin discounted at 84,000 a coin in a world where everybody is panic buying gold and running away from risky assets. And Bitcoin is still holding up surprisingly well, but is still available at a discount. So one day, a huge amount of that money that is in gold will start to flow into Bitcoin instead. And then instead of just holding up very nicely, you will see what Bitcoin is truly capable of, which is going to be absolutely epic. It's just a matter of time. So anyway, be patient, stack as much Bitcoin as you possibly can, hold on to it for as long as conceivably possible, and it will reward you handsomely as it always does. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks.